concept of connecting the building specific to the portfolio level and really getting that location specific data. We're envisioning a future where we're able to connect every building to each other, to a portfolio level, from a business continuity, emergency response, and parametric insurance perspective, and in doing so, make society more resilient to natural disasters.
Hi, I'm Jean-Christophe Garaix from Liberty Mutual Reinsurance.
Andy Thompson from Safehub.
And this is the future of insurance. Andy and Jean-Christophe, it's great to get to sit down with both of you. This is unique for the show. We don't usually get to have two people from different companies, but there's a reason why we're bringing you both together. You've recently had a pretty interesting, unique first time in the industry partnership go live. And so that's why I wanted to bring you in today. But before we get into that, I'd love to just hear, who are you and what is it that you focus on in your work? Jean-Christophe, if you wouldn't mind opening up.
So I'm Jean-Christophe Garaix. I'm French, based in Paris, and I'm working for Liberty Mutual Reinsurance, the reinsurance branch of Liberty Mutual Group, and I'm in charge of all the parametric business for Liberty.
So parametric is newer. For those who don't know, can you give us a nutshell of what parametric means?
Well, actually, is another way to loss adjust the risk. The idea is to find an external third-party index that's used to define the claim. So our target on my group is really to find the best way to assess a risk and reduce the basis risk, finding the best way to fit with the risk of an insured. So that's really a data-oriented line of business, and thanks to technology, satellite imagery, or IoTs, thanks to Andy tools and the IoTs, we are able to fit with clients' needs.
Excellent. Andy, you stand behind one of those tools. So tell us about yourself and Safehub.
Sure. I'm a structural earthquake engineer by training. Spent a good chunk of my career doing engineering assessments of buildings, designing individual buildings to withstand extreme loads like earthquakes. Over the course of my career, I became intimately familiar with the needs of clients, of insureds, of insurers, of city governments, of first responders, into the building-specific performance of buildings after earthquakes and other disasters, and really becoming aware of the lack of information that is available after disasters for people to respond to, or indeed manage insurance transaction and claims following these events. I co-founded Safehub with the idea to use technology, specifically sensors, to scale what we were doing as engineers. So instead of having individual engineers looking at every single building and bringing that information on a scalable way, but to use technology to supplement that by using sensors to touch the building, providing that damage information, and be able to support those building-specific engineering assessments.
So it's shaking, right? So we're talking about quake activity, earthquake activity. There is a lot of data around that. It was just, as we're recording a few days ago, there was a quake in Nepal, where there's quake activity all over the world. There's lots of data collecting that, but to me, it's similar to hurricane, where it's sort of like it passes over a whole area, but you don't necessarily know at a granular level what happened to any one unit, car, person, home, office building, et cetera. So you're bringing this down to the unit level then, right? So we know this area had a quake of magnitude X or had this level of shaking, but we don't know what happened at any one individual kind of point that insurance might be there for, a business may be operating, a person may be living, et cetera. Is that sort of the thinking to bring it down to the unit level.
That's absolutely right. I mean, the existing tools that are available are really designed around understanding regional effects, or understanding how was this general community affected, and be able to look at those very regional effects. Damage is very building specific. I mean, especially if you look at an earthquake, there's so much going on. There's the local side effects, the soil, the local response of the building. Sometimes just random effects of waves. Sometimes adding to each other. Sometimes they cancel each other out. There's so many random effects, and it's very, very building specific. If you walk down a given street after a major earthquake, you can see very similar construction. Right next to each other with very different response, sometimes almost undamaged, sometimes, partially collapsed. That's really based upon these random factors. So building specific really matters. And this technology, the technology we've developed, is designed around understanding what happened at the location, at the building, not in this region.
Yeah. Jean-Christophe, is this the basis risk that you're talking about, to understand that you can't just blanket sort of diagnose, if you will, an area as either impacted or not impacted, that it does boil down to the individual building? So you could be paying out inappropriately, or missing an opportunity where someone did need help and couldn't get it because the tech didn't tell you, or the broad brush approach didn't tell you that.
Yes, exactly that. Actually, earthquake parametric cover exists for many years now, but we are already providing that kind of product and capacity, but more at regional cover for government, municipalities, NGOs, first relief covers, but not for specific location. We had lots of demands coming from corporates that were looking for specific covers for their location, but we always refuse to provide covers on a parametric way with CheckMap, because we were already knowing before meeting Andy that it was too far from the location risk. The basis risk, that's what you were saying, was too large to cover that kind of loss, a loss after an event based on those check marks. So when we seen that there was a specific solution for location, clearly that add a new solution for parametric covers for lots of industry that we were not assessing with our check map approach.
Yeah. Well, so that's interesting to me, because you saw the demand. So I want to hear about how you came together, and it's interesting that you were meeting the demand for the broad brush delivery, municipalities, NGOs. That makes perfect sense, where you don't have that basis risk. But then you saw the interest, and for traditional underwriters, claims folks listening, they might be confused that, well, that's why you send an adjuster out or engineers out and you assess it. That's an indemnity response. We're talking about how could you do something more automatically without having the adjustment involved. It's a different conception of product, but you can't do that if you can't get specific. So you saw the demand for that product, but didn't have a way to meet it. How do the companies come together then?
Yes, even more when we start working on a Mexican case, where we had lots of demand coming from different industry, or even interest abroad from big companies that have some financial interest in Mexico. And Mexico was even more complicated than any other part of the world, based on the geological specificity. And he will be able to talk more about that. But the target and what we think is, if we were able to provide a product that fit with the Mexican issue and demand, we will be able to do it on any part of the world. So that's why we start with Mexican.
You started with the toughest use case.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's where we were lots of demand. So I'll let you, Andy, to explain why Mexico, but clearly that was a good business case.
And Andy, anything you'd add to how you came together? And why Mexico, for people who aren't aware?
Well, we have been developing this technology over years. with the primary use case for corporations to receive building-specific earthquake damage information within minutes from any building in the world to any smartphone in the world, and really being able to help these organizations from a business continuity and an emergency response perspective.
Yeah.
So we've been working with many major corporations around the world for years with that use case. We've measured, thousands of sensor buildings for thousands of earthquakes over years for these organizations. Taking this battle-hardened technology and then saying that we are now going to apply this into insurance transaction is a natural next step for us. And so, we have always had the vision that this technology could and should be used to reduce basis risk, to continue the vision of resilience beyond emergency response and business continuity into insurance transactions, specifically parametric insurance transaction. So for us to meet and interact with Jean-Christophe and his team at Liberty Mutual Reinsurance was a natural evolution. And I think when we had our first meeting, there was a good fit of need and what we have available. So I think it was something that was a natural evolution for us and a natural need through development, I think, of what Liberty Mutual Reinsurance was doing. And so, it was a good fit.
Yeah. And Jean-Christophe, you mentioned Mexico. What is it that you're live with? And if I understand right, the first policy's been written. So history has been made with this. What is it that is on offer in the market, and where, and how are you going about it? What are you focused on from a customer or risk standpoint?
Well, actually, we see two types of market. We are working for big sum insurer, for big corporates that they are looking for, let's say, tailor-made solution. That's where we are providing service, and Safehub Andy is providing specific service as what is a damage curve based on a specific area or on a specific building. So that's a type of market that we want to assess in Mexico and other part of the world. What we see also is a potential market in Mexico, because there was some demand, but on other part of the world with a more massive approach for small sum insured, because we can really deploy those sensors on the large scale on an economic way. So be able to provide first relief payment for small corporates or small commercial business within big areas, well, like Mexico City or other parts. So we really want to assess those two markets. Let's say some insurer of multi-million. That's we have some records of 20-30 million some insured business, but even for small business around 1, 2, or 3 million per location, that's something with a massive approach and the way that is easy to deploy, and the fact that the sensor is quite small and easy to install can be assessed with the solution.
And it speeds those businesses getting some relief, because you take out the whole adjusting process, which post catastrophe could be quite tricky. You may not be able to get feet on the ground for quite a while. So even the most Herculean efforts from an indemnity adjusting standpoint could still take quite a while. And that business, if it's shut down, that could be the end of the business while it waits. So I see parametric as a very interesting alternative, especially in these situations where, yes, the carrier is doing everything in their power to adjust as they would normally, but it may still not be fast enough. And, that business may still fail while it's waiting for the claim to be adjusted in a traditional approach.
Yeah, post-event, you never have enough loss adjuster
Yeah.
to assess an event. So yeah, clearly, I think parametric is not the target for us is not to replace traditional insurance. It's really to have a combo approach and adding some value on deductible buy down or first relief payment, and clearly that's an additional solution to what exists already on the market.
And you're working with an MGA to facilitate the underwriting then, because Liberty Mutual's reinsurance in this case, not a primary insurer. So there's a third partner who's not with us in this meeting, but you've partnered up further to be able to have that full solution then from the risk management, the parametric, the underwriting, and then the capacity behind it.
Yes, actually, what I will always say is to parametric, there is three major things to be able to sell parametric and leverage volume is one, education, two, education, and third, education. And clearly from Paris or from California and Denver, it's complicated to educate local broker, local agents, or how it works, the value, and how to let's say even install the IoT, even if it's quite simple. So we always need someone dedicated to our solution locally. So the MGA approach with a local organization able to answer, to explain, and to even post-event explain what why and how it works is really a key point for the success of those approaches.
One of the things that, and I agree with you, looking at it as an additional tool in the toolbox to meet the risk management needs and the risk mitigation or transfer needs of a business or an individual, if we're talking about a different kind of parametric solution. One of the things I've been seeing a lot of, especially in the US and personal lines right now, is carriers withdrawing from markets because while they can get a lot of rate, it's still not enough, unprofitable market, and making wise choices for the sustainability of their business. But that's a limited application kind of solution because you can't pull out of every market and also be a viable business. So I love this notion that if the traditional indemnity product rated as we're allowed to rate it is not fit for purpose anymore, or if we could charge the rate we needed to, buyers couldn't afford to buy it. So it's dead in the water either way. I love seeing other solutions like parametric come in to basically maintain the market. You create something that's still affordable that allows for what's left of the indemnity policy to still be affordable. And you're meeting the needs rather than just saying, we can't figure out how to make this work with our traditional tools, so we're going to walk away. You can only do that so much before you're left with nothing. So I was excited to see this as, especially a market like Mexico to start in, where there is a lot of quake activity. Actually, Acapulco, when Hurricane Otis hit, those buildings were built for quake. And that's why, a lot of them look like a nuclear bomb went off and they're just hollowed out, but they would have stood just fine with the kind of quake activity that they had, or most likely. It's a market that has a lot of seismic activity versus, Florida's more of a wind exposure. That was an interesting place to start. Maybe it's more a question for Jean-Christophe is, are you seeing this as for the long-term viability of, there's a property exposure here or other lines that other tools may be fit for, developing a parametric solution? Is that about keeping those markets viable, finding ways to serve the market's needs and also economically be viable for Liberty to offer coverages? Is that how you're thinking about this, that it keeps you in play to be able to compete successfully in these markets?
Yes, we try to develop different solutions based on clients' need. And when you mentioned about the Oris event, actually we have a tropical cyclone products that is sold on the region, and that has the target to calculate the wind speed at each and every point to again avoid the basis risk, and not only going through a cat in the circle, because we think there is again much basis risk. So yes, for different risk as agro, tropical cyclone, could be forest fire. That's a big product that we sell. But actually, with all the data available now, and you know, I used to say that 10 years ago when we were working, that's now, I'm like a veteran on parametric. That's more than 20 years I'm working on parametric. But 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, when we had a specific request coming from a client, the first point was to look what data is available and is it possible to answer to the demand based on the data available. Now we are more on the wall, well, what and which data we will be used, because there is, for the same natural hazard phenomena, lots of data available coming from different satellite source, and we have some protection that we can measure the waves high with the half meter precision. So yeah, there is billions of data available. You know, they launch a satellite every 2 days now in all part of the world. Private data is available, not only public, coming from Europe and US mainly. So yeah, there is lots of data available. So now is more product design, technology, how we assess this data, and the value now is there. I'm an actuary. I'm not an engineer, but as an actuary, we really enjoy and love to use those data and really to find what is the best solution based on those data available. That's our day-to-day work.
Right. Andy, one of the things I want to ask you in particular is when it comes to IoT and parametric, there seems to be this barrier to overcome of the last mile installation problem, and it tends to come up when we talk about personal lines and, you know, getting people to install the sensor in their house that will tell them the water's leaking but actually also shut it off is a lot harder than, you know, the sort of dumb sensor that just tells you your house is flooding and there's nothing you can do about it. And people talk about, well, if you get in when the house is being built, then that's easier, which is true, but that doesn't happen very often. You've focused on the commercial space for a while, where you have less of that barrier. Is that difference real? And do you think the reality is IoT insurance parametric is more of a commercial solution because of that? Or do you think there's a point where we might overcome those barriers and we're just in the earlier stages? And so, you know, looking out 5-10 years or whatever, there could be a place where these sorts of solutions are more widespread to more than just larger commercial applications.
Well, we built Safehub around the premise that, I mean, we're not the first people to install sensors for earthquakes in buildings, but we built Safehub around the premise that almost no buildings in major earthquake zones, you know, San Francisco, LA, Seattle, Mexico City, et cetera, have sensors in buildings for the various applications we've talked about. And we've built we built all of our technology around the case of saying, let's get sensors in buildings. Let's make it easy. Let's make it affordable. Let's make it, you know, super easy to distribute. So all of the, you know, the technology has been built around scalability, scaling from a manufacturing perspective, scaling from a distribution perspective, and scaling from a perspective of getting the sensors easily installed in buildings. This is the sensor here. One is 1 million times better than 0, and it gets better and better from there. So, you know, between 1 to 3 sensors per building, you will be able to get, you know, the various benefits from emergency response, business continuity, and also, you know, reduced basis risk in triggering the insurance, the parametric insurance policy. There's a backing plate that goes on. It just, you know, attaches to the wall, simply slips on. It's cellular connected, so there's no need to, you know, log into anybody's data network, et cetera. No Wi-Fi. It's got its own cellular connection, completely independent, great from a data security perspective. So we focused on making it extremely easy to install, extremely scalable from that perspective. In terms of your question around, you know, the resistance for that, we find that our customers are very easy to install our technology. Now, these are sophisticated organizations, of course. When you start talking about homeowners and sort of the some of the sticking points there. Our thought around both homeowners, but also small businesses as well, is that we should be able to use the networks that we are developing with our sensor technology to be able to provide not exactly asset specific, but much better than any other information that's available right now, and then use that to be able to greatly reduce basis risk for residential, small businesses, et cetera. So it's more about using the larger organizations, more sophisticated organizations, to be able to get the sensors in. Extremely easy to install, but it does require some effort. Use that distribution, that sensor distribution, to be able to then understand, be able to develop a very detailed heat maps, which can then be used to trigger the smaller policies, the residential policies, the small small business policies.
That's a very interesting other approach that I hadn't thought about. I was thinking make the sensors easier for a DIY person to put in on the weekend. You're talking about almost crowdsourcing the network.
Yes.
So they don't have to install it. But yeah, Jean-Christophe, you were going to chime in.
No, if I'm wrong, Andy, but I think now Safehub has more sensor in Mexico City than the Mexican government. I'm not right. I'm right.
Well, we have great distribution in various places. Mexico City is one. The Los Angeles, we have several hundred sensors in the Los Angeles basin, for example. We're approaching 50, 60 sensors in the Mexico City area. And so, yes, over time, we will start to have sensor networks that are denser than what is available from public sources, et cetera. And so, yes, I believe in certain places we do have more sensors available, in particular in the LA basin, for example, that would be available to be able to use for shake map and that sort of thing.
I mean, this is how traffic routing on your mobile phone works. Is you could use traffic cams, which is what the government or the local news station would have used to tell you that it's busy on a given highway. But if everyone's cell phone is connected and moving around at different speeds, Apple, Google, Waze, whoever knows what kind of congestion exists on a given road from that network effect. That's really, I never even thought about it from
it's not really using people's smartphones. I mean, there are some interesting,
I'm not saying yours is, I'm just saying
interesting organizations doing that. There are some interesting organizations doing that, crowdsource phones and buildings and stuff. We feel quite strongly that the sensor needs to be attached to the building. But the idea, I understand you're promoting the idea of sort of crowdsourcing or sort of network effect.
You can get a better picture of the
You can get a better picture, and it just gets better. It just gets better and better and better.
Yeah.
So, for example, we're working with Jean-Christophe and others to be able to get our sensors into organizations that have a very distributed footprint in given communities, right? So, for example, you could imagine coffee chains or grocery store, chains, or, places where there's lots of, and those sorts of places are actually in places of populations, right? So if you start getting those sensor networks out there, then again, it just gets better and better and better and better and better, the data. And also with every earthquake, right? Yeah. The technology gets better and better and better with every building, with every earthquake, and that's on a global basis as well, too, right? So you start to sort of learn from sensor networks in Tokyo to be able to make sensor networks better in Mexico City, for example. And so, it just gets this concept of getting better. So you were talking about sort of the friction of sort of adoption. What we're saying is let's use the sophisticated organizations, corporations that we're working with right now to be able to get that sensor distribution. And then let's then build the sensor network from that. As we start going into residences, use that network effect to the benefit of those residences and those small and medium-sized businesses.
And adding a point there is, again, as an actuary, we've been rating the product, and so we are able to provide rates on each and every point in Mexico now. And thanks to historical data provided by Andy for now than more than 5 years. So we have plenty of information data that give the ability to understand exactly how it works, how it's reacting compared to one point to another one. So lots of data to be used and to calibrate and actually see the correlation, non-correlation, and looking at comparing to check maps. And that's the work that we have been doing for months to finalize the product and the rating tool that give the ability for the MGA to rate on each and every point based on this data.
So before we go, I do want to ask, we're talking a lot about what you built right now, and it's very exciting and some nearer term possibilities, but ultimately, what is this about? What is it that you're trying to enable through what you've started together?
The concept of connecting the building specific to the portfolio level and really getting that location specific data is really around increasing resilience on multiple different levels. With the ability to create systems that just get better and better and better and better and better, we're envisioning a future where we're able to connect every building to each other, to a portfolio level, from a business continuity, emergency response, and parametric insurance perspective, and in doing so, make society more resilient to natural disasters.
It's a great vision. Jean-Christophe, about for yourself or for Liberty, how are you thinking about this looking out into the future?
Yes, we totally push this approach, and that's where we were trying to go with Safehub and Andy and try to, for each and every country or territory where there is a earthquake or other, but on this case earthquake risk, try to find a good local stakeholder to really scale the product and be able to build this network that will help not only the insured but the overall stakeholders on a post-event case.
So I think that's a beautiful note to end on, is notion of scaling, not just protection, but Andy's use your word resilience, which is ultimately we should be in the business of not just paying when something goes wrong, but creating a more resilient world so that we can stand up to these threats that we face and weather them better. Thank you, both of you, so much for the time today. Thank you to Jean-Christophe and to Andy for the time that they gave today. And for what they shared, it's, yes, they're talking about a specific use of a specific sensor and a specific insurance program, but the conversation got broader than that. And I think you can see that for the two of them, there's a path ahead that's much broader than the current offering, solving in Mexico City for some specific needs, self-insureds and commercial insurance customers, clients. But when you think about what this could enable more broadly, and taking this notion of the core indemnity product may not be viable for some insureds or some insurers in some geographies, lines of business, or maybe more broadly, as catastrophe continues to march ahead, as inflation marches ahead, as all the drivers of the cost of risk increase, do we need to look to a new product conception to meet the needs on both sides of the sale, right? For the customers, of course, it has to cover them in a way that's meaningful and provides the risk transfer that they were looking for, but also for the insurer, if it's not a viable product for us to sell financially, we can only sell it for so long, if ever. So we need to look to other solutions, and maybe parametric as an adjunct or a supplemental coverage or way to effectively replace an SIR, self-insured retention, or buy down some of that initial pain that someone's going to feel without having to have more limits or lower retentions on the core indemnity product, allows us to balance the financials involved, in a way that a traditional offering could never do. So I think this is really interesting. Jean-Christophe mentioned he's been at Parametrics, working in the space for 20 years. That's a very long time. A lot of people are probably just hearing the term for the first time, perhaps today, but at least in the past few years, it has been around for a while, but not widely known. And maybe it's still been waiting for its moment. I think it could be brewing right now, not just because more data, more sensors, more capabilities for actually knowing that you have a trigger that's occurred, but actually the need for these solutions is real now. And as he mentioned at the beginning, there was a lot of inbound demand from insureds for this kind of solution. And that's what led them to try to seek out something at the same time that Safehub was thinking, this really has to be tied to insurance. We should find a way to solve for that. So fortuitous moment for the marriage of those two things to come together in a new offering. But there's this bigger moment that I think Parametric is just starting to have as the need for an alternative answer starts to really become pressing. All right, I will leave you all with that. If this was interesting, if this sparks some thoughts, good. That's the whole reason why this show is here. Make sure you don't miss an episode. Like and subscribe in whatever platform you're catching this on so you don't miss another episode going forward. And of course, you can share the show. Just send people to future-of-insurance.com and they can get it as well. All right, I will see you back next time. Take care.